So I'm going to be talking about Wild Amersham, which is a new organisation set up in Amersham, and how we started it and what we're trying to do. So the background is basically that, I mean, a lot of it started with me because I felt there was nothing in Amersham. There was loads of regional organisations and there were other organisations in Amersham, but nothing specifically about nature as a whole. There's a bird watching group, there's a badger rescue group, but nothing to sort of look after nature as a whole. So I started by suggesting to my allotment association that we set up a biodiversity group, which they agreed to, and I got together with some really lovely people, but then there was quite a lot of pushback from some people in the allotment association. So we got a bit discouraged, and then we decided, well, why don't we just make it a whole Amersham organisation? And unfortunately, then my mother died, so I had to, and I was the main driver behind it, so we were a bit inactive for a while. But then we regrouped in 2023, very early on this year, and I got the same people together that had got involved initially, and lots of other people have had meanwhile said, oh, I want to be involved. So we had about 20 people, I think, that came to the first meeting to just do some brainstorming. And that's when it really got started. So one of the first things we did was to set a vision and a mission. And the vision is basically, and people were quite interesting about this, they said we want nature and people to thrive, and it needs to be a joint thing. And they said, if nature is thriving, then people will thrive, and the reverse. So that's our vision. And our mission is to enable everyone, so trying to be inclusive, to help restore Amersham to richer, healthier, resilient levels of biodiversity. So in our first year, we just need to move something on my screen. We started and we decided what activities we would do. Now, part of these were driven by the fact that I personally had already started up a project with the local school and with the local band. So those were part of it. But basically, it was to try and organize events to help people understand nature, appreciate it, and hopefully then want to protect it. So that could be walks, talks, workshops for children, practical conservation work parties. Undertaking projects to enhance nature on local sites, which were the project with the school and the band, and monitoring local habitats and biodiversity to see if we were actually making a difference. And as part of it all, we want to really work together with all the organizations that are already there. So just an example of some things that we've done. We had a dawn chorus walk, we had a family botany activity, we did sizing training, and then had work parties to size the fields that we're looking after. We did some wildflower survey training, and we held a Creatures of the Night event, which is sort of bats and moths for children. And on the left, you see a photo, that's the dawn chorus walk. We've got 3 projects. So there's the Amersham Band, which built its band building on a quite wild meadow and then wanted to look after it. So approached us and said, can you help us? And we've got Beebout and Community Board funding to do that one. Then St. Mary's School, it was its 150th anniversary, and I went to a networking meeting, and the deputy director said, oh, we want to do something on biodiversity as part of the 150 years. So I went to have a look, and they wanted to do an orchard, but actually I said, why don't you do the orchard on top of a wildflower meadow? And that's been a fantastic success because their playing field, which they bought a few years ago, is on a south-facing chalk slope. So we literally just stopped mowing it. And within 3 weeks, we had 65 types of species of flowers, which is amazing. And then Amersham Hospital recently approached us. They've got a gardening scheme, so their gardens are being looked after by volunteers, but they've also got lawns, and they wanted to turn them into meadows. So this is the work party you see on the right. This is from a local company. People use their volunteering day to come and help. And we didn't do anything to the meadows. We seeded those bare areas, and we basically put demarcation on so that the contractors don't mow it anymore. And then we're monitoring biodiversity. This is the field at the school. Yes, you can see there's, that's the field in the back, completely shorn to inch of its life. And that's what came up when we just left it alone, which is really wonderful, especially for the children. So we're monitoring wildflowers there and at the band. We're monitoring for amphibians and reptiles at the school, the band, and Pondwix, which is a community orchard. And that we're doing together with the Bucks amphibian and reptile group. And then we've given people some training on wildflower monitoring. So Lily asked sort of how did you do it? So I thought, what has really helped in doing this? I mean, what has helped quite a bit is that I'm not working and I can afford not to work. So I've got a background in charity management. So I've been doing a lot of the driving of it and the coordination and the management. And that's also a concern for me because, if I wasn't there, what would happen? But so which I'll talk about in a minute. But one thing that's really helped is before that I started with all this, I really got to know quite a lot of local organizations so that I learned a lot and they gave me support and advice and also networking. And I got to know quite a lot of experts. So I worked with nature organizations, not in Amersham, but in regional area. So when we started doing events, I had experts I could call on. When I needed to get, to have a risk assessment for a children's activity, I could call somebody and say, can I copy yours? And that. We thought about becoming a separate organization, but we decided in the end we would become a part of an existing organization. We looked at several organizations locally, and eventually we decided on Sustainable Amersham, which is an organization I was already doing some volunteering with. And it's a really nice group that's got a very good network. And the benefits of that were that they had a lot of context and experience. They had a lot of volunteers, so some of our volunteers volunteer for Sustainable Amersham and for us, but also all the systems are already in place. So we didn't have to set up a website or social media or insurance or bank accounts or governance systems, although we've also helped Sustainable Amersham develop theirs. So they've also benefited from us being there, but that's made life a lot easier. The other thing that's really been quite key is that our partners at the hospital and at the band in particular are very active. They have their own structures. They have very good people. We have one contact in each that we deal with, and they're very sort of proactive. And they have groups of volunteers. And it's been quite a difference with the school because the school doesn't have that. And, the teachers and the headmistresses are just so busy. So you end up actually doing a lot of the work yourself. Whereas with the band and the hospital, it's worked very well. So I think that's taught as a lesson is in the future, we really want to work particularly with organizations that are already set up to implement a project. And then I think we were also lucky in the sense that there wasn't another nature organization in Amersham. So when we came along, the people that were keen for that sort of thing were keen. There were grants available and we didn't have a lot of trouble getting them. And there was local interest and enthusiasm. And we haven't sort of tapped all of that. We haven't done a massive sort of drive to get members or volunteers. If people become what we call supporters, they would become supporters of Sustainable Amersham. But we haven't driven that, very hard because I want to sort of get things set up a bit better first. The challenges are, we've got a really good group of volunteers and they're all very keen, but I think there's about 30 people in total, of which 20, I think, are sort of willing to do stuff. But I think they're particularly keen to do the practical stuff, helping with events, maybe some comms stuff, and so on. But they don't, a lot of them are very busy with work and family commitments. And so the administration and coordination work at the moment, a lot of it is still done by me. And I hope that I can start handing that over at some point. It's also, as I just said, setting up systems before things get too big. So, if you get a sudden influx of people that want to volunteer, have you got systems that you can quickly sort of, channel them to the right things? Because at the moment that takes a lot of time. There are organizations, there's volunteers that say, oh, we must do this, or we must contact that organization. But the thing is, of course, the minute you've contacted another organization, you meet with them, it results in extra activities, which is nice, but it also creates extra work. So it's trying to balance between expanding and doing new things and also not causing too much work. Obviously, future funding, because at the moment, the funding has mostly gone into the sites, so, for example, buying fruit trees for the school field and buying a gate for the band and so on. But obviously we also need funding for activities and events and so on, and things like insurance, because the insurance of Sustainable Amersham has gone up quite a bit because of sort of risky stuff we do. And then, as I said, succession planning, you know, if the sort of key people in an organization that drive it forward and that have the time and the energy to do it, you know, step down or move away or, you know, get fed up, what happens to the organization? So that's an interesting question, I think. And the question is also always, are we making a difference? You know, are the people that are coming to our events actually, you know, behaving any differently because they've been to a Creatures of the Night activity? So, you know, are the sites changing? I mean, obviously the school fields was fantastic change, but you know, we'll have to keep monitoring to see whether it keeps getting better or not, and that's why we want to do the monitoring. So that's it. Just a sort of snapshot. And